We've spent most of the course talking about how to interact with Azure and the services within Azure as a developer, whether it's storage and interacting with the storage API, or if it's message queuing as part of the service bus, working with that as, through an API as well. Well, Azure itself is fully exposed via an API. And that's actually a pretty cool concept as developers. It says, first of all, if there are management things that we need to do, maybe as part of our development process, we want to be able to spin up an environment easily and repeatably, right? Or maybe we want to create our own tools for managing different aspects of Azure, or maybe we just want to understand how to get in and work with Azure. Well, there's a complete API for that, in addition to and kind of complementary to the API operations you're going to have with anything else. Well, all right, the core of that, the base of that is going to be a REST interface, a REST interaction, but there's also SDKs that make it much easier to bring that interaction into whatever language, and we'll talk about the supported language in just a moment, whatever language that you're working with. In fact, beyond just the SDKs, and we're going to talk about the SDKs, some things that are important, and I think this is pretty cool, and this speaks to, if you will, the new Microsoft. The SDKs themselves are open source and they're stored in GitHub, right? And so at a very minimum, you can go out to GitHub and you can get SDKs across a variety of languages, right? But there's also tools built into common development environments. Both Eclipse and Visual Studio have official Azure tools built in to make your job easier. And frankly, I use Visual Studio all the time interacting with Azure, and I actually use the community edition of Visual Studio, all right, or the Express edition, I guess it is now. But in any case, I'm using the free version of Visual Studio 2015 and fully interacting with Azure, and I've got a full suite of tools that are made available to me. That's pretty cool stuff. All right, now, in terms of the SDKs, .NET, not surprisingly, probably has the most robust SDK set. All right, there are extensions, there are tools that are available to you. The tools are deployed, and actually a lot of the tools, quite frankly, you get. Now there are packages, and when I say you get when you install Visual Studio, certainly 2015. Okay, you have Web Deploy, which you already get. Obviously, you've got ASP.NET and Web Tools, which are going to be part of your installation of Visual Studio. And even in 2015, you're going to get most of the Azure SDK. Now, you may get the Azure SDK installed, but you always want to take a look at refreshing the Azure SDK. All right, it is installed by the web platform installer, if you're familiar with that tool. If you're not, it doesn't matter. You can go out, if you do a search for the Azure SDK, and you hit install, it's going to fire up the web platform installer, which is just the platform that it uses to, well, install from the web. Okay? There are client libraries. You can also get these client libraries from NuGet. In fact, if I do this correctly, which apparently I did not, there we go. All right. Here is just an example of the different components in NuGet. For example, here's Microsoft Azure Web Jobs. So if you wanted to manage web jobs through NuGet, through the API, you could do that. Right? And so obviously I'm not going to go through all of those because that would put you to sleep, but there's 136 packages that are NuGet packages for working with Microsoft Azure. It's still actually referred to as Windows Azure here, although it is now technically, externally Microsoft Azure, but you'll see Windows Azure all over the place internally. Anyways, those are some of the SDKs. Now, in addition to that, all right, there are a number of additional SDKs, and you can see this, and I think this is pretty self-evident. Right? You've got PHP, you've got Node.js, Ruby, my favorite, Python, because I've done some stuff with that, Java, and even PowerShell. Okay? And so you can fully, through any of these platforms, in fact, we'll also talk about client tools and the cross-platform client tools that are command line tools that allow you to interact with Azure and script interactions with Azure. A wide variety, and the idea is that it's going to take the interaction with the API and it's simply going to simplify it for you, right? So when I'm writing code in Python, I'm going to write Python-like code to interact with the Azure API and to interact with Azure itself. So you've got this system that not only provides APIs for a variety of developer services. It also provides APIs for managing the overall system itself, and you'll find open source SDKs that take that and encapsulate it into the right kind of architecture for different languages and different programming environments.